Here we have a CERYDRA, first impressions and initial theory crafting. Honestly, she is looking like a very unique character. And personally, I thought she was going to be one of those characters that you're going to have to must summon for, her being a harmony character. And you know how these type of characters go in Honkai Star Rail. But I mean, I am pleased to say that for right now, as of this moment, she is not looking like a must pull, but I'll explain what she does and how her kit may synergize with other characters we have in the game, especially find on which is the character that most people are most interested about when it comes to CERYDRA. As always, if you are interested in pulling for any of these characters and you want to be one step ahead and save money at the same time, I have something here that may help you. Lootbar.gg, the trusted top-up site in which you can get premium currency for your favorite Hoyo games like Honkai Star Rail, Zone Zero, and Genshin Impact at a discounted price. After you select the game, you're going to enter your UID in your server. Make sure this information is 100% correct. And after you select the product you want to purchase and click the top up now button, you follow the prompts to the purchase. And after you're done, you're going to get the currency directly to your game in a matter of a minute or so. Lootbar also has over 20,000 reviews on Trustpilot with a 5-star rating. So you know it's trusted. It's very safe, very fast, very easy. So make sure to save some money. Check out lootbar.gg, link in the description below. All right, CERYDRA is going to be a wind harmony character that's going to specialize in amplifying skill damage. And not only amplifying skill damage, she's going to allow you to get free skills off with your characters, which is kind of insane. We haven't seen anything like this. The closest thing we have is Anaxa, and the interaction between her and Anaxa is actually insane, but we'll go more into depth as we go and explain more of her kit. So her base stats are nothing crazy. She does have a really high attack, not higher than Robin, but still pretty high. And you'll understand why that is the case in a little bit. Her basic attack is just a regular attack that just hits for the regular multiplier that attacks hits for. But before we move on into this skill, I think it's a good time to explain what these symbols are over here on the left. The triangle is going to designate that she has a stacking mechanic. So we're just going to put this to designate that she has a stacking mechanic. And these are the symbols we're going to use for that. The pawn right here that you see, we're going to use this for our boy Super Saiyan Phynon because she does have some sort of marking that designates an ally and puts a little pawn on top of it. Now, the king is what happens when the pawn levels up. So you can level up this pawn, and now you have this king just floating around your character, and it's an enhanced version of the pawn. So now that you know what everything means, I'm going to put everything back. Actually, let's leave this here, and then let's leave the pawn where it was. All right, so the skill is a support-based skill, so it's not an attacking skill. And what it's going to do is, firstly, it's going to designate a ally to put the pawn buff on, and then give herself one charge or one stack of this charge. So we can actually go here and move this over here and change it to 1, right? So now she has 1 stack of that. Now the maximum amount of stacks that she can have is 8, but when she reaches 6 stacks, is going to transform the pawn into the king, right? And that's pretty much how you transform the pawn into the king. Whenever an ally character has the king on it, it's going to gain another buff that we're going to call the coup buff. It's going to get its crit damage increased by a certain amount. And the next instance of skill used by the character is going to be a free skill that doesn't consume any skill points, and it's just going to fire off. So what's going to happen is after you have the king buff, you're going to use your instance of skill. The coup buff is going to be on you, and because you have your coup on you, when you use the skill is going to launch, does not consume skill points, and then immediately after, he's going to launch a second instance of the skill, which would be the original instance of the skill. So that one will consume skill points. And then after the second skill is done, this is going to go back to the pawn, and then this is going to go back and consume 6. So if you have 6, it'll go to 0. If you have 7, it'll go to 1. If you have 8, it will go to 2. So she does give your ally extra actions, but not in the same way that Bronya and Sunday do. They still have to take their own turn to be able to use it, or be action advanced to be able to use it. That's not all that she does as of right now. She doesn't just only give crit damage, she does give attack, but we're going to cover that a little bit later. Now her ultimate is an AoE hit that gains her 2 charges. So if you ult, you gain 2, and then if there are no targets with the pawn buff, then you get the pawn buff on the character that's in the first slot. So the ultimate, frankly, nothing crazy. I wish it did a little bit more, but I mean, 2 charges is okay. Now as far as the talent, the ally character that has the pawn buff is going to get its attack increased by 24% of CERYDRA's attack. So this is why she has such a high base attack. And then when that character uses a skill or basic, she is going to gain 1 charge. So this is mainly how you're going to be able to charge your CERYDRA. Obviously characters that do multiple skills, like for example, Zila, Anaxa, stuff like that. All those characters are going to pretty much charge CERYDRA a lot faster. But the only thing is that you cannot gain charges when you have the king buff on. So essentially, because you're getting free skills, they don't want you to just loop skills forever. So whenever you do have the king buff on, you cannot gain charges on CERYDRA. That's the only limitation that she has as of right now. Another very important thing, if you have two characters, right, and you use your skill on Finon first, so he has the pawn buff, but then you want to buff somebody else, for example, I don't know why you would run another DPS with Finon, but let's say you do, if you swap over the pawn buff to somebody else, she will reset her own stack. So you got to make sure that you have the pawn buff on whoever you want. Because her technique is a little tricky, which we're going to cover next. And you may end up with the pawn buff on somebody that you don't want, especially in teams that have multiple DPSs. So her technique, as I said before, is a little tricky. So when you use her technique outside of battle, she herself will gain the pawn buff. But whenever you switch to another character, that character will gain the pawn buff. So you got to make sure that you enter battle with the character that you want the pawn buff on, because that way you don't have to reset the pawn buff on it and waste a skill point. And then when you enter battle, she will use her skill on the target that has the pawn, which again gives her 1 charge. So she will be starting the fight with about 1 charge already. Now let's go over everything that this little pawn buff does. So when you have the pawn buff by itself, you're getting a lot of attack, which is 24% of her own attack. And then also you're getting 20 speed, just flat out 20 speed, not base speed. You're getting 20 speed for 3 turns whenever you have this buff. And whenever this character attacks or uses a skill, basic or ultimate, CERYDRA is going to gain some energy, which will help her cycle a lot faster, which is really, really good. Now, she also has some DPS-centric traces, which allow her to have 100% crit rate. And also once per battle, it allows her to gain 1 charge whenever the character with the pawn buff uses their ultimate for the first time in battle, and it only triggers 1 time. So essentially, if you once you do the first transformation with Finon, CERYDRA will gain a stack of the pawn, essentially. And then the final trace, when CERYDRA attack is greater than a certain amount, she will increase her own crit damage by another certain amount. I think the amount that you will need on her is about 4,000, but given that she has a really high base attack, it won't be as hard to manage. And then that is pretty much her kit. It's pretty simple. I mean, it's a lot of verbiage. You have to just understand what these buffs are, but it's actually pretty simple. She has a character that's designated with the pawn buff. Whenever that character attacks, she gains more stacks. And then once she reaches 6 stacks, she's going to move the pawn buff and transform it into the king buff. When you have the king buff, you're going to get increased crit damage. You have more attack, and you're also getting a little bit of speed. And also the next skill you use will trigger twice, essentially. That's pretty much what that means. So that means for characters like Finon, Anaxa, and stuff like that, that rely on your skill damage, this is going to be a very, very strong character. Now, my only concern is that her damage amplification isn't that high. You're getting a lot of attack, like you're getting a significant amount of attack. However, you're only getting 72% crit damage, which that is something that a lot of characters already do. And they also give you extra turns, which she doesn't do. She just gives you extra skills, which a lot of times you are going to just do anyway. You're going to end up scaling twice anyway. But the fact that with other characters like Sunday or Branya or Sparkle is that you don't have to invest in speed. With CERYDRA, you're either going to have to run another character that action advances your main DPS, or you're going to have to run speed boots so you can make up for the lack of actions, which is okay because he gives you so much attack from her buff anyway that you are going to be justified in running speed boots on most of the characters, and a lot of these characters are going to want to run speed boots anyway, so it's not a whole lot of negative, but it's something that I noticed that if you're not action advancing yourself, then she loses a little bit of value because she has 0 action advance at all in her kit. Now, some of the common interactions that you may be thinking about, okay, so how does she work with Herda? So if you're able to make it to where you get 6 stacks on your pawn buff whenever you are about to use your enhanced skill with Herda, then you are going to get 2 enhanced skills with Herda. It is what it is. You're just going to fire 2 of the big enhanced skills back to back without consuming any skill points. So this is a character that's going to require a lot of planning for most characters. For Finon, probably doesn't require a lot of planning because he's just like Unga Bunga. And then once you have it one time, when Finon is transformed, you are still able to gain stacks. So he is actually able to get free skills within his ultimate. So Finon's going to transform, and let's say he has 4 stacks. He's going to move twice. You do 2 basics. He gets 2 stacks. The next skill is free, and then he's able to move again. So Finon can get, depending on how you set it up, he can get 10 actions in his ultimate, depending on how you set it up. Another character that you may be wondering how it works, maybe Mighty. Even though the attack means nothing to Mighty, launching 2 God Slayers back to back may be very strong. You know, like his God Slayer hits like a truck. But if you plan it well enough to where your God Slayer lands and you get the 6 stacks, or let's say you get the 6 stacks and then you get your God Slayer, then you are going to launch 2 God Slayers back to back. So that is really cool. Another character that also has a really, really strong and cool interaction is Anaxa. Anaxa is a character that already does free skills. So if you plan it, well, you don't have to plan it with Anaxa because you're going to want to skill anyway. But if you plan it with Anaxa and then you get your 6 stacks, your next Anaxa skill will trigger 4 times because you trigger your skill, which is going to trigger an instance of the skill, and he's going to launch 2 of his own skills, right? And then his regular skill is going to trigger 2 more. So you actually get 4 skills of Anaxa with CERYDRA, which was kind of crazy. If you have a hyper invested Anaxa like I do, then this is going to go insane. This is going to go so crazy because you get 4 skills for 1 skill point. Essentially, that's what that means. There's a lot of other interactions you can have. There's a bunch of characters like Zila, for example, with her resurgence. You can get free skills with Zila. She basics and scales really often. So she's going to be a very good character to stack up CERYDRA. Also with Finon, he will give her 2 stacks because of the 2 triggers of his skill. So if he skills 1 time before she has 6, he will skill, give her 1 stack, and then the extra proc of the skill gives her a 2nd stack. So right now, I think Anaxa is the best character to skill her with because he launches the most amount of skills. I think Zila may launch a little, or maybe on the same plane on how many skills they launch. But Anaxa is actually a very fun character with CERYDRA, and they're both wins. So I mean, I guess it makes sense, and they're pretty synergistic in that regard. But essentially, CERYDRA is going to be a godsend character for any DPS that relies on their skills to deal damage. Because not only you are going to get increased damage on those skills, you are also going to get a repeat of those skills. Jing Liu is another character that may benefit quite significantly from it, even though she doesn't scale with attack anymore. She gets free skills without having to consume skill points, which is really, really good. And again, she's also giving attack, she's also giving speed and crit damage, and she's also dealing quite a little bit of damage herself because she does have high attack and 100% crit rate as of right now. So let me know what you guys think about CERYDRA. I personally think she's a very fun character. I don't see her being a must pull unless you're hyper maxing your Finon or you have like a hyper invested Anaxa that you want to max out. I don't think she is a must pull in that regard. She's definitely not Tribby level in my opinion. She's definitely not Sunday level in my opinion, but she is very, very good, very, very strong, and super specific in the characters that she wants to buff, but she does a fantastic job of buffing them. I would want them to make her damage amplification a little bit better. I think adding a little bit of damage bonus into the pawn buff would be pretty beneficial, or swapping the speed for an action advance every time they take a turn. I think that would be a little bit better than just giving him straight speed. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Until next time, guys. See ya.